On today's show, we'll be discussing the outlook, both fantasy and real life, on tight ends we expect to go in rounds 1, 2, or 3 in the upcoming draft. We will be going in order of Mike's rankings. We'll also get Renner's NFL comp. I have a beef with Mike Renner because, shout out Penn State, one of the great Penn State heroes of all time, one of the great Penn State seasons in the history, and that's saying a lot, one of the great Penn State seasons in the history of Penn State football at the tight end position. And he is not Mike Renner's number one tight end in this class. Number one is the hated Michigan product, Colston Loveland, 6'6", 248, known as a pass-catching tight end. Renner, you've personally offended me. We'll get to the exact breakdown on Warren here in a second, but Colston Loveland, number one overall, is going to be a controversial ranking, I think.
To me, it's like when Laporta and Michael Mayer were coming out, right? And I think everyone would say it was Michael Mayer was the guy. And I was kind of in that boat too. But what wins at the NFL level is the athlete. And to me, Loveland is just the far superior athlete when you're comparing the two. Warren's awesome. I think he's a much better prospect than even Michael Mayer. We'll get to him. But Loveland can get open on his own and continually did in that offense, whether it was, his sophomore year, 2023, he's the second leading receiver on a national championship team, very reminiscent of like Brock Bowers in his Georgia days, or even this past year when he had 34.7% of that offense Michigan passing game. That was actually more than Tyler Warren did. So he had a higher percentage of the passing game. It's just Michigan's passing game was so inept. And in the 3 games Colston Loveland missed because he had a shoulder injury this past year, Michigan only had 169 passing yards total in those 3 games. So like if they moved the football, it was because Colston Loveland was getting open. And so he is a great separator. He's super young. He turns 21 next week, which at tight end specifically is unique. You don't see a lot of young tight ends producing early. It's a physically demanding position, and especially playing tight end at Michigan, where you're going to have to play in line. He was in line 50% of the time. And I think he holds up well in the running game. So like he can be an inline tight end. He just does need to get stronger. But again, not a lot of guys this young are coming out in the draft of the tight end position. But if you played for tight end for Jim Harbaugh, you had to block. He did do that. So there's just not a lot to dislike. He's not elite after the catch. I think maybe like his biggest worry about passing game, where a lot of tight ends and their production at the NFL level comes post-catch. Those guys, what they can do is yak. But I think he's a good enough and smooth enough athlete in space to still like run a drag and get 30, 40 yards if there's space in front of him. So big fan of his game, just a real natural receiver of the football.
All right. A few follow-ups here for me on Colston Loveland. First, when your team sucks, as Michigan sucked this year, and you're going to stand out because of your dominator rating, okay, that's fine. Tyler Warren was playing with much better players. We'll get to the numbers that Tyler Warren put up here in a second. Second, your comp on Colston Loveland is Kobe Fleener. If his comp is Kobe Fleener, how can he be better than Tyler Warren? And lastly, I'll ask, on all seriousness, from a fantasy level, I've seen a lot of projection on this guy that he's not going to play in line at the NFL level. He's going to be a strict pass catcher at the NFL level. And that intrigues me to some degree. So yeah, any more thoughts there on that stuff on Colston Loveland?
You are drafting him as a receiver first. I think he can grow into that inline role, but his ability to run routes, like he could just pass as a wide receiver. And that's kind of my litmus test for first round tight ends oftentimes is like, if you just played him at wide receiver and just disregarded everything else, would you still covet him that highly? In my opinion, yes. Like you watch him get open, you watch him run routes, you watch like the fluidity and just the natural receiving ability. And I say yes. I think the other intriguing thing is like he came out of Idaho. So wide receiver in high school. He gained a lot of weight at Michigan in 3 years. What could he look like in 2 more years, 3 more years? Kind of like George Kittle was a 5th-year guy coming out and was like 230 pounds when he was a junior. What could he do if he really put the work in the weight room?
Kobe Fleener, who is your comp for him, played with Peyton Manning, never caught more than 54 balls in a season, however, was known as
Andrew
kind
Luck.
Of like, with Andrew Luck, and never caught more than 54 balls in a season. However, Kobe Fleener was fantasy viable a lot of time. He just got a reputation as being like kind of soft, I think, at the NFL level and ended up falling out of the league pretty quickly, though. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting comp considering Kobe Fleener, was far from like a dominant player. You would not go back and spend a first-round pick on Kobe Fleener, I guess is my point.
Yeah, there's so few tight ends that are dominant players, right? And he's not Kelsey. He's not Gronk. He's not reminiscent of those guys. He's definitely much more of a vertical threat tight end. And Kobe Fleener was. Now, again, it's hard to make a 1-to-1. He's a much better blocker than Fleener ever was. He's much more physical, even with the sort of caveats that like he's still not play strength yet at a high level. That's just kind of like Kobe Fleener was more wide receiver than tight end, Stanford and the NFL.
Okay. Let's get to the actual best tight end in this class, who is the Mackey Award winner. And again, 104 catches, 1,233 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns last year for Penn State. At times, he was the entire offense, had multiple games with double-digit catches. They also used him in really big spots as a wildcat quarterback. And like people are say, oh, he's not that fast. He's not. Dude, they put him at wildcat quarterback. He ran 26 times for 218 yards and 4 touchdowns. And also, I believe he played some quarterback in high school. They dropped him back. They had him throw it 6 times. He completed 3 of those passes with a touchdown. So when I was just like watching, I'm no evaluator. I'm not talking about the combine numbers, anything like that. I was like, this dude absolutely flashes off the screen as the best player on the field. So consistently did Tyler Warren. Now, the knock on him that people have is that he didn't break out until his 4th season. He was already pretty old when he broke out, played behind Brenton Strange, etc. But, when you play for Penn State, you're going to have some good guys in front of you. That's just the way it is. Go ahead on Tyler Warren here, who honestly, he might go in the top 10 picks of this draft.
He could. He very well could. He's much better inline blocker, much more of a NFL sort of prototype in terms of size, physicality, post catch. He had 19 broken tackles this past season. And not only Brent Strange, but then Theo Johnson last year, who was he the second tight end drafted, third tight end drafted? So, no real knock to say when 2 NFLers are in front of you, kind of like those Bama wide receivers. It's like if you get 1 year and you produce the way he did, I don't give a darn that it was a shitty year, right? So I'm not worried about that whatsoever. You mentioned high school quarterback, and that's the biggest thing that shows with him on tape is he just knows the spaces to get to in zone coverage, how to create that subtle separation. He feels like he's an extension of, Drew Aller. He just like the mind meld they had was excellent. Just a very reliable target. I think he only had 3 drops all last season. And just, he may not be a high-end athlete. Like, he's not going to run. I think there's a reason why he hasn't done any pre-draft testing. That usually is a bit of a red flag for guys who are healthy at this point in time to just skip it all together. But he's more than athletic enough. You just watch him, his ability to cut out at an angle, the fluidity, like he moves like a lot of former quarterbacks move. I think there's a reason why a lot of quarterbacks have made the transition to tight end easily. It's because, they're nimble. They have that ability to turn the way that not a lot of guys 6'5", 256 have. He has that in and out of his breaks. His in and out routes are just elite. And so just a really, really high floor guy. I went Loveland 1 just because of the ceiling, just because of the upside in the passing game, just because of the athletic traits. But they are really splitting hairs. These are great tight end prospects. I think I just hammered that home that these are not Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a different animal altogether. But they're probably some of the best we've seen in the past 10 years.
Yeah, and your comp on Tyler Warren was Jeremy Shockey, who, for these guys remember, was an awesome player for Giants and obviously at University of Miami. Also, the thing about Tyler Warren is he's going to go in the top 10. Brock Bowers didn't go until outside the top 10. So people are going to immediately be like, oh, he's better than Brock Bowers. As much as I love Tyler Warren, I do not think he's better than Brock Bowers. How would you comp those two guys?
Bowers was unique, man. I mean, he won because he wasn't the size-wise of a tight end. Like, he was undersized. And he just ran routes like a wide receiver. If you just put him at X, he could be 1,000-yard wide receiver. He does not need the tight end designation. There's a reason why, like Georgia with Adonai Mitchell and Ladd McConkey and just everyone, like Jermaine Burton, he was the number 1 wide receiver on a national championship team. Brock Bowers was different. He was always like better than any tight end prospect I've ever seen as a route runner, but really was more of a tight end in name only. Warren could not pass necessarily for a wide receiver, but doing tight end things, he's so good at.
Okay. After that, I feel like there's a pretty decent teardrop here. Your number 3 tight end is Terrence Ferguson, 6'5", 247 out of Oregon. Comp you have on him is Julius Thomas, the ex-Bronco. What do you think about, and people are going to say, well, we'll get to Fan here in a second. But yeah, go ahead on Terrace Ferguson at 3 on your tight end board.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty big teardrop. I think Loveland and Warren have a good shot of being like 1,000-yard tight ends at the next level. I think they are those sort of players, and they'll be drafted in that sort of spot. After that, there's this tier of 3 guys who I think all have really high level receiving traits, but they have weird aspects to their game that make me think like, they just may not end up getting featured in such a way that's conducive, but they could hit a real high upside. It's a very good tight end class, and I really like this second tier. I put Ferguson there because to me, he's the smoothest. You just see him run routes, and it just looks like what the high level guys of the NFL look like. It looks like a Sam Laporta at the top of the route. It looks like a Travis Kelce at the top of the route. He can, break down, shake, and still explode out of his cuts the way you need to be a productive wide receiver. He's got a great size, 6'8" wingspan, ran a 4.63 with a 39-inch vertical. More often than not, who are the guys producing at the NFL level at tight end position? It's the guys that run low 4.6s, mid 4.5s, that can jump, that have that aspect to their game, because you're going against linebackers that run 4.5. So you got to run away from those guys. So he can do that. Productive, 21 broken tackles over the past 2 years, 591 yards this past season. I really like why he's number 3 is because I just think he's the most polished receiver after those top 2. Play strength has to improve. He's not an inline guy. That's going to be a worry just in terms of like seeing the football field at the NFL level. But the guy has natural receiving ability. That's, why I went with the Julius Thomas count.
Okay. I'm excited to talk about this one because I know you're not deep into the fantasy circles, but Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green has the fantasy world completely captivated. Anytime you go out as a college tight end and catch 117 balls for 1,555 yards and 10 touchdowns, you are going to get the attention of the fantasy community. And it reminds me of, and this guy's getting way more pub than the guy I'm about to say, but I looked at Isaiah Likely's stats coming out of Coastal Carolina. And then in the preseason, he went out and dominated as a pass catcher. Also, I was like, I want to have shares of Isaiah Likely. He's turned into a pretty good NFL player despite not getting that much of a role as a pass catcher. So what do you think about Harold Fannin and his ability to win as a receiver at the NFL level, the way he's dominated lower level competition at Bowling Green?
So I have not liked an undersized tight end in a long time. Tight end at the NFL, the undersized guys are more often than not fool's gold. I think even Isaiah Likely, if he wasn't in Baltimore, just like they struggled to see the football field because of the way NFL offenses operate. I love Harold Fannin. To me, all 3 of these tight ends I'm about to talk about are second round picks. And Fannin, I believe, is one of them. You watch his tape, and it's just like there's a reason why he put up the best numbers of a tight end in college football history. And like not even close. He had almost 50% of Bowling Green's passing yards this past season. He's so explosive out of his cuts. He's got insanely good ball skills. The coaches there at Bowling Green just like raved about him. And actually the coach for Bowling Green, Scott Loeffler, is now the Eagles quarterbacks coach. So if he's on the board at pick 64, I would be very surprised with the way Loeffler talks about him if they don't draft him, given how much they use 2 tight end sets. But he's a good blocker in space. Like he's a physical, willing blocker too. So he will see the football field. He just doesn't have inline size. But the one weird thing is that he's super knock-kneed and duck-footed. So he can't run certain routes. It looks awkward. But also with that, when he runs like corner routes or post routes, it's almost like his legs are perfectly set up to just explode out of them. He doesn't really lose any speed. So a weird prospect for sure. But I love this guy's tape. I love his traits. And I wish he would have tested a little bit better. 4.71 at the combine is not ideal. But I think someone's going to use him as like a big slot, move him all over the formation, because as a slot receiver, he's an awesome blocker. If he's blocking safeties, linebackers at that second level, he's very good. He's blocking DNs as attached, not so much. But more and more people want those hybrid players that you're like bigger slot wide receivers that can be run blockers with the way the NFL game's going. So I think he'll find a good role. And if he does, I think he'd be super productive.
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed too. 6'3", 241 at the combine and only ran 4.71, 34-inch vertical. Not the best athlete, which I guess makes me wonder. And what I think people like me are going to say is, well, he was athletic enough to dominate who he played at Bowling Green. playing at the NFL level and with that athleticism, is that going to be a problem for him to win as a pass catcher there?
Well, what my first thought was, because I watched his tape, my first thought was, oh, he's not 241 pounds. My first thought was he's 230 and he put on bad weight, because you watch his tape and you're like, he's not a 4.71 guy. He's not. Like, he is much, much faster than that. So is someone in the NFL going to be like, hey, just play at 230 and you're a slot receiver for us, and we don't really care? I think there's a realistic chance that that's ultimately what he is at the end of the day. And because you said, the competition level, he played Texas A&M and Penn State, and I think he went for over 100 yards in both this past year. I mean, like, he was the best player on that football field for the Bowling Green team, and like looked like he belonged at that level of competition against both those teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Eagles. Obviously, we expect Dallas Goedert probably to be traded at some point between now and the draft or during the draft. And so pick 64 would be an interesting landing spot for sure for Harold Fannin. All right, we can run through these last two guys quickly here. Elijah Arroyo, your comp is Jared Cook, 6'5", 250 out of Miami. What do you think about Arroyo at the NFL level?
Arroyo's intriguing, man, because he's 6'5", 250, 6'10 wingspan. He's the fastest tight end in this draft class. When he gets vertical, the guy can fly. 16.9 yards per catch this past season. His career was kind of derailed. He had an ACL in 2022, 4 games into that season, didn't return from it, took him over a year to recover, didn't get back until late 2023. So really only 1 year as a starter. But again, the size, wingspan, speed combination is elite and catches the ball really well. Now, only had 7 contested catch opportunities his entire career, only caught 1 of those. We really don't know what he's going to look like on normal tight end stuff, but drags, overs, go routes, seams, things of that nature, he is going to be a weapon. So like I said, these guys are all like second rounders to me. I think if he goes to the right spot, gets the right usage, he could be a guy who, catches maybe 40, 50 balls, but they go for like 800, 900 yards.
Yeah, that'd be exciting for sure. I believe he did not attend the combine or didn't run.
Hasn't run anything pre-draft. Had shoulder, I believe.
Yeah, okay. And he hasn't. We do not have a 40 time on him at all, do we?
No, nothing on him. But like, you watch him on tape, and it is he ran like a seam route where he's running away from a safety. He's fast.
Okay. Yeah, I only mentioned that because I think like a lot of data has shown that 40 time at wide receiver isn't that important, but 40 time at tight end can at least show some stickiness at the NFL level. Last one we're going to talk about here, your 6th tight end off the board on your board is Mason Taylor, 6'5", 251 out of LSU. Comp for you on Mason Taylor is Luke Schoonmaker. Go ahead on Mason Taylor.
To me, so he's Jason Taylor's kid. And interestingly enough, I feel like most like players' sons, they have like you can like tell they're a player's son right away. It's just like Mason Taylor didn't look like it, but he doesn't like have that killer instinct to his game that I feel like a lot of guys who have just grown up and been around football their entire life have. But he's a good athlete. Obviously, Jason Taylor's kid, not a surprise there. I think he ran mid 4.6s at his pro day. Super reliable, very good hands, great pass catcher. Only 1 drop last year. And just in terms of like, if the ball's coming his way more often than not, he's going to haul it in. I just didn't see the route running or the explosiveness that I saw from the 3 guys prior. I think he's a starter. He's been starting ever since his freshman year at LSU, but he's just never a guy I see like what I saw on tape. I don't see him ever taking this next step into a massive role, hence like the Luke Schoonmaker comp, where like NFL teams are going to like him because he does everything correctly. He plays the right way. He's going to be in the right spot. He's going to give effort in the run game, and he's got a good frame and good enough athleticism. I just didn't see a guy who played great through contact as a route runner, not particularly shifty or nuanced to get me super excited, but I think the NFL is going to be fairly high on him still.
Okay. I think those are the most important guys in this class to talk about, and therefore we've said it all on fantasy and NFL relevant prospects here at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions. I hope you guys found value in this and getting to know all these guys and what they're about and what their outlook is and what their play style is as we get set for best ball drafting season and, of course, regular drafting season heading into DFS and props in the fall. Can't thank Renner enough for his time doing all 4 of these episodes. Renner, tell the people where you can be found if you want to be found.
You can find me at Mike Renner _ on X. You can find me on Pushing the Pile podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to check me out, I will be on the Bleacher Report Draft Show Night 1. Go ahead and check that out. Should be a lot of fun.
All right. For Renner, for Silva, for producer Luke, for producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.